Hey there guys, and welcome back to Dino Reacts. So today we are looking at Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. As always, I'm going to give you my positives and my negatives on this movie, so let's jump straight in. So guys, starting with my positives of this film, it is the opening sequence. For me, that is probably the best 15 minutes of the entire movie. So we follow Laurie Strode as she's brought to Haddonfield Hospital, and of course Michael Myers is in hot pursuit. What I like about this entire sequence, even though it was only 15 minutes long, it feels like that original Halloween series. We get a great Michael Myers, we get some great chase sequences in there, and some absolutely great deaths. The deaths, yes, they are quite brutal and gory, but they fit within this universe. What I didn't like slightly was Michael Myers grunting as he does the kills, but overall it's a great 15 minutes to set up the movie. Now after that, things start to go downhill when we kind of find out that whole sequence was a dream sequence. We also catch up with Laurie Strode, who was quite traumatized from that last movie. The characters in this one, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with them. There are also two different versions of this movie. So there's a director's cut version as well as a theatrical version. I gotta say, I do like the characters a little bit more in that director's cut. But speaking of the characters in this one, Laurie Strode and Loomis are just as grating and irritating as they were in that last movie. Laurie Strode especially, she has gone through quite a lot in this movie and the last one, and they do play on that whole idea of what trauma can do to a victim. Now again, when I watched the director's cut of the movie, I love that idea. I love how they play with that idea and how they develop her character. Unfortunately, the theatrical version, there are quite a lot of cuts and edits that doesn't really make too much sense. Her character just comes across as quite grating on screen, and instead you tend to like Annie a lot more. And that is the character I loved in both versions of this movie. Annie herself, she is also going through trauma, but she's going through in a little bit more of a subtle way. So she's gone from this bubbly girl we saw in the original movie to a woman who really is afraid to leave the house and who's become kind of a mother figure for Laurie and her father. The director's version also gives us a lot more scenes with Laurie and Annie, which I appreciated. It just fleshed out both of their characters and kind of showed you where both of those were at that point in time. As for Loomis, he's become an absolutely egotistical, horrible villain in this movie, and he's kind of there for you to hate him. There's no quality of his character that you like in this movie. Overall, I hated the character. I didn't really like what they did with Loomis. Again, it was interesting, of course, to see a different version of him. It's kind of an alternative timeline, so I don't mind that. But just the character himself, I didn't know why he was really in the movie. He was kind of only there to show up at the very end and take on Michael. The other supporting character besides Annie that works in this movie is Sheriff Brackett, played by Brad Dourif, and he gives an absolutely incredible performance in this movie, especially in the scene where he discovers Annie's body. That for me is one of the best scenes in all of the Halloween films. Unfortunately, it just happens to be in Halloween 2. The scene alone has Brad Dourif's character discover his daughter naked and bloody, dead on the ground. Now it is a very graphic scene, it's a very dark and cold scene, but the performance he gives in that scene alone really makes you feel his pain. As well as that, we do see a little flashback picture of Danielle Harris when she was quite young, just to pull the audience in and think of Jamie from Halloween 4 and Halloween 5. And that is one of the big issues with this movie. There are two completely different versions to this movie. Yes, the storyline is pretty similar. Yes, it follows the same beats, but we very much have a producer's version and a director's version. For me, the director's version just works a lot more because it's less sloppy, the characters are fleshed out a lot more, and even the kills work a little bit better. My last positive with the film is the psychic connection between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. So this is pretty much something we've seen in other Halloween movies, but again, it's fleshed out a lot more. I did like that in this movie. I liked the cinematography in the dream sequences with Laurie and Michael. I thought they were quite great. But just overall, it makes sense and it's a good idea to look into. And maybe Laurie Strode could end up like her brother. What is that family connection? Where does that evil resonate from? Now on to my negatives, and we're going to start with Michael Myers himself. So he's a lot bigger and bolder in this movie. He also looks a little bit like a homeless man. I hated the look for Michael in this movie. I get that Laurie shot him in the face in the last movie. They kind of had to do something with the mask. But just the overall look of him, the fact it's been either 1 year or 2 years, depending on which version of the movie you watch, and he's just walking around fields like homeless hobo. It just doesn't work, and it doesn't feel like Michael Myers. As well as that, he grunts throughout the entire movie anytime he kills somebody. Towards the end of the movie in particular, the director's version, he says die to Loomis. Just the character himself I hated. To me, he just wasn't Michael Myers. The kills as well going on that, they are quite brutal. They're a little bit over the top. They go on for a bit too long. Again, when you look at a Halloween movie and you compare it to other slashers, Halloween has always kind of kept things a little quieter. Yes, there are brutal kills in the series, but just the way Michael does it in this movie, it's very aggressive, it's over the top, and it just goes on a little bit too long. And my last negative is the ending to this movie. Again, there are two different versions of the ending to the film. Both of them, they follow the same beats with different outcomes. So in the theatrical version, Laurie Strode gets put into a mental asylum, and in the director's cut, she gets gunned down. Now, I do like the director's cut version a little bit more because of that ending and the Love Hurts song that goes over it. But again, both versions are very sloppy, they're very messy, and they don't really know what they're saying. Overall though, I'm not a huge fan of this movie. I do prefer the director's version, and I appreciate what Rob Zombie was trying to do with these characters. Just for me, he didn't pull it off in either version. Both movies, they are quite sloppy, they're quite messy. Even the way they're shot, it is very grainy, it's very cold and depressing. I wasn't a fan of the movie, guys, but if you are a fan, of course, let me know in the comments below what you like about Halloween 2. I would really actually like to know what people love about this movie. If you didn't like it, guys, of course, let me a comment also. Be sure, guys, to subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos if you get time, and until next time, Heidi ho.